Here, we can clip that whole first part.
Cool. Yeah, it wasn't going anywhere productive.
All right, welcome back. Episode 3. The Idea Guys back at it again with the white vans. And we're going to open this up with a new segment that I'm calling a ramble.
This is a surprise to me, by the way.
Ramble, I told you about it when you were in the gym.
Oh, yeah. Like 30 minutes ago, by the way.
30 minutes ago. So
Off
basically, here's what's happening. We have spent the last 2 episodes semi-unstructured. Rambling.
Oh, okay.
And we feel that we owe it to the listeners, all 3 of you. Thanks, Mom. We owe it to you to be a little more structured with what we're talking about, even though I'm sure what we've talked about was incredibly useful.
Oh my gosh, enthralling.
Yes, and filled with value. So I've heard.
Yeah.
And so we're limiting ramble to 10 minutes a person. We might not use that whole time, but if so,
I feel like that's a long time.
It's capped. Well, I mean, we did it for an hour basically for 2.
Wait, so the one person just gets to just rip it?
Well, just I mean, it's a dialogue.
Okay.
Between the 2 of us.
Okay.
The thing that I wanted to ramble about was this guy named Michael Ferrero. This is what I'm hyper fixated on for today. I'm a bit of a podcast fiend as of late. I switched over to Apple Podcasts from Spotify, and shout out Apple Podcasts for making it so much easier to discover new podcasts, because I've just, uncovered a treasure trove of podcasts that I should have been listening to this whole time, but I haven't. And so I was listening to a new podcast recently about this guy named Michael Ferrero. They were doing a deep dive on his background. For those of you who don't know who Michael Ferrero is, he is the founder of the same company that runs Kinder. They made Nutella. They invented Tic Tacs, a variety of other goods, all coming through this one guy, originating from him, Michael Ferrero. So I think his story is incredible, and I think he also has really, really good lessons on leadership and like how to run a company that I just wanted to preach here. Like, I think this is so cool. So a little bit of backstory on him. He was raised in northern Italy during World War II, like 1920s. I don't know is that when World War? I'm so dumb.
No, that was World War One.
World War One, 1920s. So he's going through life at that time, and I guess the part of Italy he's from, big producer of hazelnuts and chocolate at the time, or the ingredients to make chocolate, cacao, very expensive and not plentiful. Is
that a result of World War One? Do you know?
I don't know. I think he just came from a rural part of Italy that you weren't like importing stuff to make chocolate.
I guess chocolate's like a tropical plant.
Yeah. So they didn't have it either way. So he basically is like, the hazelnuts are the thing. And basically throughout his whole life, in his biography or his biography, which is only in Italian, by the way, you cannot get it in English. There are no released copies of his biography in English. So people have gotten the Italian one and translated it over, but it's like not available for purchase.
Like the Bible.
Yes. It is the Gutenberg, the Gutenberg Michael Ferrero.
We're going to get the King James version of the Michael Ferrero autobiography before GTA 6.
Exactly. Dang.
What?
Rip GTA 6.
Wait, what happened?
No, just taking forever.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway. But so he was really involved. Basically, spins up this whole business empire that's doing X billions of dollars per year now. And the whole thing is family owned. They've never taken on additional money from other people. Whole thing is running through the family. So all of those profits are basically staying within the family and staying within the people that work at the company. And what is so interesting to me is him and a lot of other great founders of household names. For example, the Walmart guy, Sam Waltman. I should know his name if I'm going to say this, but basically the guy who founded Walmart, Les Schwab, another guy that I'm a little obsessed about as of late. They're very, very hyper fixated on making things really good for the people who work for them, and they attribute a lot of their success to that. So they're like hyper loyal to their employees and making their lives really, really good, and they believe that drives productivity, loyalty, and innovation. And I think that is really, really cool. So some examples of what he did, he would put his factories in rural areas instead of putting them in big cities, which is what you would normally do. You put them in big cities, and then because that's where all the people are, so you would attract people to come work for you. And what that means for people out in rural communities is they have to move into the city to come get a job. What he would do is he would put it closer to them, and then he would actually provide transportation from their villages into the factory.
Dang.
And I think what I love about this, and what I think is a good takeaway for anyone in leadership positions, at least in my opinion, this is my 2 cents on leadership. I like to think of myself as a semi-okay leader.
Let's go.
Is self-confidence.
Let's go.
Is this concept of I've heard it put as servant leadership, but you can also think of it as like a high love, high expectations environment. So if you're thinking about things, and I think we talked about this actually in the first episode, if you put things on, your x-axis is expectations and your y-axis is love, you want to be in the top right corner, meaning you can expect really big things from your teams if they feel like you care about them and you're working with them, if it's like a high love environment. Underperformance happens when you have really high expectations and no love, meaning those people just feel burnt out, or you have really high love and no expectations, meaning like those people just end up never doing anything because they feel completely comfortable and, like they don't really push themselves. And so what I'm seeing from people like Michael Ferrero or Sam Waltman is that they sit in that upper right hand corner where it's like they care about the topic and they care about their people, and that's where you get these really productive, high performing teams. So again, this is coming from 25, 26-year-olds. I don't know how old you are, but
he doesn't know how old I am. No, jeez.
But basically,
built a whole app together. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really know how old you are. We're like the same age-ish, so it's like.
I think you're 27.
Yeah, I'm 27.
Okay, I'm 26.
Okay,
we're just uncovering that on the podcast.
We're better friends now. Look at that.
But I think that's really cool. And I think there are a lot of people, without speaking specifically, that I'm like, I think could benefit from that style of leadership where it's like, I care about you, I need to express that I care about you, and then I can have high expectations for like what you're doing.
How do you feel cared about though as an employee?
I think this kind of
not
goes back
different
to
for everybody?
Culture in our last episode. One of the things that I learned about in a organizational behavior course that I took in college.
Dang, credentials, listen up.
Yeah, listen up.
This is factual.
I took a whole semester of this.
One whole semester.
Do I actually remember exactly what I'm about to say?
You remember this?
But I'm going to spit it off the dome.
Let's go.
Here's what I think it is.
Ramble.
Welcome to Ramble. Here's what I think it is. I remember hearing something along the lines of, when employees leave a company, it is almost never tied to salary. Like, or not leave a company, but like express that they do not like a company anymore or like feel disgruntled. It's almost never salary. It's not because I'm not getting paid enough. It's almost always a cultural thing where like they feel undervalued. Again, not tied to salary. It's like, aside from salary, I feel undervalued by this company. Nobody appreciates what I do. It's an ambiguous environment, right? Which can result in like burnout and all sorts of things like that. But I think that putting like how appreciated I feel or how loved I feel in the company is a part of that function to me. And I think there are different ways to do that depending on what level you're in. I think as a direct manager, if you are a manager of people, like making sure that you're saying out loud, like, hey, I appreciate what you're doing a really good job. Like everyone loves that. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think like I get a warm, fuzzy feeling inside when you tell me that I did something well. Right. And I think most people would resonate with that, whether or not you like to admit it. And you may not even be saying that like I actively seek validation like that.
Sure.
But I think everyone generally likes that feeling of like being told like, hey, you did this thing really well. So being able to call out like, hey, you did this thing well to the people you're managing, I think is really important. As you kind of go up the ladder from there, I think there are other things like I think having vision and communicating vision clearly, I think plays into this as well. Maybe less on the love side, but more on like the burnout side of saying like, hey, this is the thing we're going after. And like, we are all on the same boat going this way. Mm-hmm. Like as you kind of like fracture that and like people are rowing in different directions, I think that can also cause like similar feelings of like this company doesn't care about me or whatever. So I think those two things, but again, like I think that both of those leaders that I mentioned, so Michael Ferrero, Sam Waltman, do a really, really good job of that. Sam Waltman was also quoted to have visited like more retail stores than anyone ever, right? Like he lived for retail and he would go into stores to see like what they were doing.
Imagine that. I'd be so stressed.
I just think it's dope. It's like Mr. Beast low-key does the same thing. Have you ever heard him like about what he does? No. He goes and audits for Feastables.
Does he have an autobiography yet?
No, not yet.
Dang. When is that dropping?
Although I can't imagine him a great writer. I'm not going to lie. Like,
he doesn't have to write. I guess it could be a biography.
Yeah, I think someone needs to write that about him.
How is he not a great writer if he's done what he's done on YouTube? I mean, that requires some writing.
I think
storytelling.
Clickbaity storytelling is different
Sure.
from writing a biography. Although I think he does say he would have really, really valuable things. Also, I'm like, what do I know? Maybe he's an incredible writer. I don't know. But like he is quoted to have like a similar passion for the product. And I think we're straying a little bit from like what I was originally going at, but I think there's a similar lesson where for Feastables, he would actually go into stores where his product is being sold and like either offer to, I think it was Walmart. He has like the whatever, I don't know, the backstage pass, like the employee card to like get into the stock rooms at Walmart. And he has been said to go restock the product himself. If he walks into a Walmart and goes to the shelf where Feastables are and he's seeing that like it's like banished to the top, top left, no one can see it, or it's like the box is empty, he'll go fix it himself and pull it out and like put it back in, which I think like there is some really, really admirable things and great things that come from having a founder that is that hyper focused on like the product and they know the product that well. So that's my ramble. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts?
Along the way, there was a few things. One, I was like, imagine if venture capital got a hold of Ferrero. Like, what would have?
I hope that never. Imagine how terrible that would have been.
I don't know, man. We could have some pretty like innovative spreads.
No, because that's not what they would have done.
They wouldn't have stopped at Nutella.
That is not what venture capital does. They would have said, "Oh, Nutella's a cash cow.
We need a savory
Nutella.
We need a savory spread."
What about Nutella but for pizza? Like that's no. I don't trust venture capital to do anything.
And I think that was a big thing. I just went into like this alternate universe of that would have been crazy. I think that one thing that's like probably cross-cutting, similar between those guys is they loved what they were doing. Like passion probably matters. I don't think you have to like be obsessed all the time with what you're doing. I think you can find, like you said, with Ferrero, is he loved his employees and he cared about them. And like, yeah, they were making Nutella spread and chocolates. So like, I'm sure he had some degree of interest in that, but I bet that having the passion for the business itself, some component of it is what drove success in a lot of ways. And it's that passion that's going to get you past, setbacks.
Yep.
I'm sure his story, if you encountered anything in there, had, opportunities for failure.
Yep.
And it's really easy to raise the white flag when you don't care a ton about the thing.
Yep. What's your why?
Yeah.
Shout out Simon Sinek.
Really got to dig in and understand your why.
Also the sales bros. Sales bros are big on what's your why.
Dang, this guy's just consuming podcasts left, right.
Just ridiculous.
He did go on a drive to Idaho, so we'll give him that.
Yeah.
A lot of listening time.
Oh, okay. Hold up. Last thing I'm going to mention on this ramble section about Michael Ferrero. I think as I think about the product line of Kinder, for example, I love Kinder because like they have so many different treats for different things. And I think what is most interesting to me is it's not like just chocolate. It's always like, for example, the Kinder Egg, right, is like chocolate with a toy inside.
Yeah.
They have the hippos. Have you ever had the Kinder hippos where it's like it's like a little wafer kind of in the shape of a hippo with chocolate on it, right? Or like Kinder Bueno. That's my favorite one. That is my
those are good,
dude. Like Kinder Bueno goes so hard.
A little bit of a different form factor for chocolate, right? It's not just chocolate.
It's not just chocolate. And what I think is so interesting is they are, to me, that feels like a polished product. And it's weird to say about like chocolate, but one of the things that they talk about in his biography is that he strongly believed that chocolate was not just like a candy. It wasn't just like about the flavor. It was about like the feeling. And he was very
episode 1.
Well, he was very into making it like a whimsical thing.
Episode 1.
Right. And so that was the point of the Kinder thing, is he was like, I want people to feel the joy of, I think the exact quote is like, I want people to feel the joy of Easter all year round.
Okay.
And so he made a little chocolate egg with like a toy inside. But the same thing could be said about like the little hippo things, where I'm like,
this guy's Willy Wonka.
No, he's literally the closest thing to Willy Wonka we possibly, short of Timothy Chalamet.
Is there a correlation? You're like,
short of Timothy Chalamet and Johnny Depp, this is the closest thing to Willy Wonka we could possibly ever get.
Dang.
But I think that is a really interesting way to think about your product. And I think like most products should be thought about in the same way. And it's really easy to do with consumer facing products because like I want them to really enjoy using the thing. But like at the end of the day, your product is more about just the utility that it provides. It's about the feeling I get as I use the thing. Clip that.
Yeah.
But like think about all your favorite products. Like it's not just the functionality, it's the feeling that they're delivering along with it. It's the whole experience. Chad and I recently talked about Duolingo over text, and you were talking about cumulative layout shift. And it was brought on because I was talking about transitions in consumer apps, because one of the ways that I think is super interesting that makes an application feel super, super polished is whenever there is like a transition state or a loading state, is having really, really clean animations. And for whatever reason, like that is so much better and so much more validating and like exciting than just a loading spinner, even though effectively it is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I think Phantom Wallet does this really well.
What is Phantom Wallet?
You know, use Phantom Wallet?
Mm-mm.
That's crazy. Phantom Wallet is like a crypto wallet.
Oh, this guy's big into crypto.
Big on crypto.
This is news to me.
Bitcoin millionaire.
Put the fries in the bag. That's where you're getting all these fancy oils and meats from. Jeez, look at this guy's fridge, and you'd know he's a gajillionaire. My goodness.
But basically, Duolingo also does this well, where they've introduced a lot of characters, and they're very visual design heavy. And it's like, could you accomplish everything that Duolingo is doing with just like boxes on the screen? 100%. But
that's just homework.
Yeah, exactly. But when you add in this layer of like the visuals look really, really good, it feels fun to use.
Yeah.
And as I think about like, you know, my favorite products, like I think that is definitely something that I'm like, I didn't realize I gravitated towards that, but it does make it feel better. If you could have two apps that do the exact same thing and one just looks better.
Yeah.
Like I think that's can be very compelling.
Well, it does matter, especially in a consumer app where it's like I'm picking and choosing how I'm spending my free time.
Yep.
Well, I guess not all consumer apps are really oriented towards recreation, but the ones that are, I think.
Yeah.
It's something like Duolingo where it's like, oh, I'm going to spend my free time learning a language. They're like, let me make this delightful for you so that you're encouraged to keep doing
delightful. That is like the key word. And I think there is huge application for that in B2B, because I can't think of anything less delightful to use, in my opinion, than your average B2B software, because it's completely task focused.
Yeah. Is that the final frontier, is like B2B software that makes you feel something?
I definitely think so.
I think there's some that I'm like, I'm not sure the feeling is like, ooh, like warm fuzzy.
But it should be.
It's more like that was nice. You know
what?
It's little stuff, and it's mostly marketing websites that get me.
Really?
But that's when they're going for it. So I guess like within the product,
that doesn't count.
Let me think. I feel like Cursor does a cool, like when talking about loading states, Cursor will do like the text shimmer, which is now everywhere, by the way. I don't know who did it first.
Text shimmer.
But like while your text is generating, it doesn't like bounce. It like shimmers. It like it shines. It has like a wipe shine animation.
Okay. I'm trying to think.
It makes it look like shiny.
Yeah. But isn't that's such an interesting little like micro interaction where it's like someone spent time to make it do that?
But yeah, and it signals something to me. Like if it weren't doing that, it'd probably be like, I'm so used to it now that it would be like, oh, something's broken.
Yep.
It's stuck. You know, it's not loading. So that's like, there's little ones. I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But yeah.
Well, there you have it. I think unless you have anything to ramble about, I think that ends our first ramble.
No, I think that my rambles will be dispersed throughout our other topics. Okay. Maybe.
Hold that.
I'm taking the distributed ramble approach, which is the whole reason why Andy wanted to do the ramble segment, was to avoid the distributed ramble.
But anyway,
I'll lock in.
Time to lock in. I'm jumping into our list of topics. Hold up. Let me find it.
And if you guys have any topics for us that you're dying to hear us talk about, which would be crazy, but
let us know.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, into the topic: how to validate and prototype your idea. I'm gonna pass this over to Chad first, and we're just gonna go from here. So I think it would be really helpful to hear your experience with Bookends.
Okay, and
then also Chad is getting ready to embark on a new venture. Which I'm not going to say anything about. You can choose to speak about it if you want, but it would be interesting to know, like, how would you think about it in that context, because it's a little different than what we've done with Bookends. So I'm curious to know.
It's hard to have super strong opinions right now because so much is changing. I can talk a little bit about how I used to do stuff, and then we can kind of go into how that's shifting recently. So early days, I feel like this was actually probably my strong suit, even as a younger engineer, was I just loved new stuff. Like it can also be a weakness, I think. But the 0 to 1 motion for me is like really entertaining. And I really loved the idea of trying to encapsulate the core concepts of a feature or a tool or a full-fledged product in like a local environment with very simple proofs of concepts. So
Proofs of concepts.
proofs of concepts.
Proofs of concepts.
Plural.
Interesting. Anyway.
And I think the first thing that you have to do in order to do this, and this is with AI or without AI, is you have to try to find what is the core value that I'm trying to deliver.
Okay.
That's the first question. And that question is harder than it sounds, I think. And we can spend, a lot of time talking about answering and asking that question. And then the other thing you need to do is what is the least amount of work I can do to resemble some implementation of said thing. I think you can call that an MVP, a minimum viable product, or you can call it a proof of concept.
Yep.
I think I'm more leaning on the side of proof of concept because this doesn't have to be an actual product. I think it can just be the representation of an idea. So really, I think answering those questions at least gets you to a step one on like how to go about implementing. And then the next thing is like, just do it in the language you're comfortable in. Like we're talking from a development perspective. Yeah.
Okay.
Like tactically, like just do it in an environment, and maybe to abstract that a little bit outside of, engineering and development, like find a way to exercise the implementation of that thought in an environment that is extremely comfortable and familiar to you. So if you're planning on selling a physical good, like take that to the farmer's market that you attend, every weekend. Like that's an environment that's familiar. There's so much less friction doing it in a place than if you like have never sold on Amazon and like you're doing it, like probably don't start on Amazon, talking from a development perspective. Yeah. Just like trying to find ways to do the things and the tools that you're familiar with is going to save you time. And you might actually innovate a little bit during that. Cause I don't know. That's the stuff that's off the top of my head.
Well, I think it's interesting. The second point you brought up of like, find the quickest way to do the thing and deliver the first point, which was like, what's your core value proposition? I was in a class once in college, in university.
So studied, this guy.
So well read, incredible. Wow. And the teacher was talking about this same subject, and he was basically like, if you wanted to, he was like, say that you are creating a camera for, Zoom meetings. And that camera, that you want to be able to like put this camera in a room, and you want to like capture like all of the people inside the room so that they can be like broadcast over, basically like a meeting cam, like we would have, like, sits in the room, videos all of the people, probably has a speaker or something like that. I mean, he's like, say that you wanted to do that. Let's pretend it didn't exist already. Or it does exist and you want to improve it. So his question was like, what's the quickest way for you to go about validating that thing? And like, I think what you want to jump to is like, oh shoot, well, I need to have some hardware knowledge because I have to build, build a camera, and then I got like, I got to figure out how to make people want, I don't know, like how do I market the thing? Like there's like all of these other things. And then like, oh, how do I, it needs to have an internet connection because it needs to, like broadcast into like the cloud where it'll like do whatever and then like come back down on the other side. Yeah. There's like all of these things. And you could definitely do that. And that's a great way to spend 6 months building something that you don't know people actually want or need, or building something wrong. Yeah. And so he's like, I'll give you an idea. There's an even easier way to do this. Cause he had basically polled the class, and we had all said some variation of like, you could do this, you could do that. And he was like, wrong, you're all wrong. And he took a piece of paper and he drew a rectangle on it with a circle in the middle. And he said, this is a camera. And he held it up on the wall. And then he said, all right, now let's talk about this. What do you think? Like, would this camera work for us? And we're like, oh, well, no, it probably wouldn't work because like it probably needs to be higher. And also like, does it have like a speaker or anything? Does it have a microphone? Like, how can I need to make sure I can speak into it. And then we're like, well, like, what's the angle it's capturing? But like, just because he had taken this piece of paper and slapped it up on the wall, we had like actual concrete feedback of like, oh, well, it can't be like that because I need to accomplish this with it.
Yeah.
And like all he had done was take this piece of paper and slap it up on the wall.
Yeah.
And so I guess the lesson there for me was like the prototype that you actually need to deliver is a lot simpler than you think it is, or can be a lot simpler than you think it is. So like whether that's just like a Streamlit app, whether that is something running on local host that you vibe coded, like two-shotted with Claude or whatever, like I think it can be a lot simpler than what you're actually thinking about.
Yeah.
And then you just like, you take that thing out. And then I think a big thing for me is go to where your users are for the thing. And like part of that is understanding the first point you brought up, which was what's your actual value prop? Because those two things have like a tightly coupled relationship. The people that care about that value proposition are a certain type of people. And that certain type of people will want, this certain value proposition.
Yeah.
And so figuring out like what is the relationship between those two things? How can I validate that? And then go validate it more by hanging out in the places where those people are. So, for example, with bookends, one of the things that we've discussed is like we happen to have, luckily, so when we rolled this out with my wife and she posted about it, she reads a lot on her Kindle and she posts about it. So like some portion of her following is also interested in her because she reads and not because of like the other content that she posts.
Yeah.
And so that was like a small group of people that we were like, hey, like we could have them kind of see this thing. They're semi-interested in the topic already and see what happens. Right. And so we put it where the people that would use the thing are. And then we got like really, really good response from that. But like other places we could go is like, well, we could go to libraries and we could go talk to people there. We also talked about going to gyms, right? Because like bookends plays heavily into like building reading as a habit. And where's another place where people are building habits? Probably the gym.
Yeah.
And so like going to places and finding people in the places where they, like where there's just a high saturation of people that would be interested in that value proposition is really, really useful. And you don't even have to do that physically, although I think it's really useful to do it physically because you get really good feedback then.
Just knowing your audience is a hard thing to do. Like, and you need to build with an audience in mind. I know it's fun to just like tool around with stuff, but if you're not intending to show somebody, like what's the point? Yeah. And I think that having the intention on showing somebody, even if it's just a couple friends or family, like knowing that you're eventually going to turn your screen around is like going to make you do a little bit more, even if that person is you. I think is super interesting. And those are usually some of the most compelling products, is something I built for myself. That's how Bookends started.
What Bookends was, right? And so like we had discussions early on. And when Chad was like just starting to spin up, initial versions of Bookends about like who is the user. And I think the positioning stuff actually came afterwards in a later discussion where I was like, I think if we make this a little more focused on building reading as a habit and less on some of the other things like making reading social and, bringing in reviews and stuff like that, like I think if we focus more on this as a habit, then I think there is actual market potential for that. Yeah. But the original idea was just like Chad tried a bunch of book trackers and didn't like them.
They actually suck, guys. Like I'm not, this isn't just confirmation bias. Like
if I get one more Bookly ad, I'm going to snap.
Like very few times in my life have I been like, I'm just going to build this thing because I studied computer science and I don't do that. Usually I just suffer with the bad things, but these were bad enough to where I was like, I actually don't think any of these are acceptable. It was an interesting experiment.
Yeah. But like because of that, in those early discussions when we were talking about like who are we building this for, I bet I could actually go find a message like deep in our iMessages somewhere where it's, because I swear I said this, where I was like, I think you are the user.
Oh, you did.
You should build, for sure did. Yeah, like build it for whatever you want it to be because you are the primary user here. So like obviously Chad intuitively knew something was wrong with the existing like versions or the existing competitors in the space. And I was like, go build whatever thing that you think should exist. And we can kind of like position it afterwards.
Yeah. And we're not even
what we did.
Close to where I would like to be eventually. Like, I think there's still a lot of feature work to do, but like in terms of like table stakes stuff, I feel like it does fit better than the other ones. I still feel that way. You guys might feel otherwise, but just don't tell me if you do.
No, please tell us. Please tell us.
You can tell him.
I would love to. I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
But
I think tactically speaking, with the bookends thing, the first thing that I did when I had the idea was like, and this might just be things that you develop as an engineer over time on like what do I need to know to start? Obviously, it's like I don't own library data.
Yeah.
I don't have all the books available, and somebody probably does that I could use. So like the first place we went was like, what's the API? What's the data store that we're using? How much of the data are we generating versus how much of the data are we using?
Yep.
And that's still core to our product, is like the choice of data source for all the books.
And that changes too.
Yeah.
We've added stuff to that post release.
And part of the process of starting tactically is like knowing what is high signal enough to like dive deep into versus what is low signal enough to be like black box for now.
Yep.
Like black box for now for me was like, what are the social interactions? Like we had no idea how that was going to work, how that was going to go. And like, yeah, maybe we worked ourselves into a corner a little bit in that process. But that's because we weren't indexing on social stuff.
And I think that actually worked out to our favor, because I think it made us a more opinionated product on what we wanted to be opinionated on, which was like being a really good tracker that helped you read more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, social from our users is like the last thing that people actually cared about. And granted, there is an audience that does care about social reading, but I think a lot of people, for the most part, didn't actually care. They were like, it's not social media for me. I'm not going to Goodreads to scroll through my friends' reviews. Like, that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
So one thing that came to mind as we were talking about this, there's a book called The Mom Test. And I think this is really good, kind of tactical advice. When you're validating your idea, I think the worst thing you can ask is, what do you think about this, as you show the thing? Or do you like this? Or I made this. What do you think? Like, and the premise behind the mom test is, if you showed your mom anything and told her I made this, she's going to say, oh my gosh, I love it so much. Right? That's what people who are in your immediate group generally will do, because even people outside your immediate like social circle, even people outside that, because I think, as speaking generally, people don't want to make other people feel bad.
Yeah.
And so even if I don't really like the thing, I am not going to come out and say like, nah, I don't really like it. I think if you're in the space that we're in, which is like tech, where you have a lot of opinionated people, be it engineers or product or whoever, like we are a little harder on that sort of thing. Cause like I will straight up tell you something and like, nah, I don't like that. And like, that's like just part of what I do. That's like my job.
That's why you're the ideas guy.
Yeah. That's why I'm an idea guy. But like learning how to convey your thing and get feedback on the product without just saying like, what do you think about this thing? Because the answer every time to that from most people will just be like, oh my gosh, I love it so much. That's so great. And that's not what you want. You actually want to hear the reasons that they don't like it. You want to know and figure out like, does this solve a pain?
I think you can ask your family, but you just have to ask the right question.
Exactly.
Like if you don't have access to a customer base, then like, yeah, your best bet right now is probably
and that's where
family.
you should start. I think like Sam Altman said, like that's back when he was leading out YC, was like, that is the first place you should start, is like get your friends and family to like sign up for the thing.
But like ask them directed questions that are well thought out about like, how did this feature solve X problem? Yeah. Chances are they maybe don't even know enough about that problem to answer specifically. But if you give them context and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to solve, what do you think about how we're doing that? Then it's not so much an attack on your character as it is just like talking about an idea and an implementation of an idea. And I do want to say, like, one thing you need to do as a builder of anything is separate your identity, like your pride, from your thing. Like Bookends is not me. Sure, it's an extension of some of the things that I think about and some of my talents and skills. But at the end of the day, like a bug in some code I wrote doesn't mean I suck as a human being. Yeah. And if like,
it means you suck at your job.
Yeah, you might suck a little bit, but like, I think if you get stuck in that loop of like, oh, someone didn't like this, so that means I'm bad, it will just negatively impact your work. You would think that taking that really seriously would make you better, and maybe for some people it does, if you're just like really good at being hard on yourself. But I think it's actually a negative feedback loop for most engineers and most like builders.
Yeah.
If you get too wrapped up in the identity of it all.
It also makes it really, really hard to collaborate. Like, I think any building environment has to be a low ego area.
Definitely.
And like the lower the ego, the better.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, if you, as soon as you're, and I think this is like obvious probably, or I hope it is to a lot of people. And if it's not, then I'm glad that you're hearing this. Like, if you feel, as soon as you feel ownership over an idea, that is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because now you are campaigning for your idea, and we are very protective. As humans, we are very protective over our things. We have a strong sense of ownership.
Yeah.
And so if someone else does not like my idea, I take that personally. And so what you should be doing, and I think probably honestly the best people at doing this are designers. Because like designers are the ones actually putting something that people look at into the world. Like however Chad wants to structure the back end, honestly, I don't care. Like I have very, very few opinions on like how he wants to do that. And I'm not going to go like back and critique his choices.
You would only have opinions if it constrains something
exactly,
exposed.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'm like, for the most part, I'm like, engineers are less exposed to that world. Product is semi-exposed to that world because like, you know, like we're shipping stuff out to customers. So like you do feel some sense of ownership there. But UX to me is like the number one place that is really good at detaching themselves from the idea of the thing. Because what they do is if you've been in, you know, like a UX review for, you know, a new feature you're building out, they're going to put the thing up on the screen. You gave them a bunch of requirements. Hopefully the two of you kind of did product discovery together, you know, talked to a bunch of users, figured out like what are the, you know, key flows. You worked with engineering to identify constraints and stuff like that. And at some point during that process, there's going to be a design that goes thrown up in front of people.
And everyone goes like this.
And everyone's going to be like, it's so easy. Again, this is the man in the arena thing, because it is so easy to be the peanut gallery in that situation.
And like immediately have like
and just start nitpicking like I wouldn't do that and I wouldn't do that, and you feel good about yourself because you're like, oh, I'm catching all these cool things. And it honestly, like, you are not doing an ounce of the work that the other person just did.
Yeah.
And like you didn't have to deal with any of the letting go of your ego that person just had to do. Because that person just had to present it, watch it get torn apart by a bunch of people, couldn't take it personally, now has to go back and iterate on all of the feedback people got. So like shout out UX designers, like that is a hard job.
Yeah.
And I've seen that as like, as we've been working on other stuff, or like, you know, bookends and talking about other stuff, is like I've taken on some of the design role. And like I get a little like nervous or like a little antsy when I'm like, oh, like I don't want other people to see this. Or like, oh, Chad said he didn't like this thing. And then I'm like, oh, freak, that means I'm like a garbage designer or something like that. And that's not what it means. And I just think UX design is probably the people that I say get exposed to that more frequently than others. So
high visibility role. And
extremely low ego.
Yeah.
Must have an extremely low ego.
Shout outs to our designers of the world.
Facts.
It is, and it, for me, like that's been the hardest part of bookends. Like I don't mean to say this to like hype myself up, but the back end road itself, I mean, we're not breaking ground, you know. We're not treading into any untrodden waters when it comes to feature set and data manipulation. However, it is very clean. I will say that. I
just want to say that. Everyone's saying it. The back end is very clean. It's the cleanest back end.
Okay. Weird things to say on a podcast, part 1.
Pause.
But yeah, the time suck has been just the pixels shifting.
Deciding where things go.
Dude. And you've seen it. Anyone who's used the app, we appreciate your patience with the homepage, particularly.
Yeah.
I think we've landed on something that's pretty good and has been well received, but we'll see how it iterates from there.
Yeah.
But it's just like because it's so easy to tell when something's wrong.
Yep.
It is very hard to tell when something's right. It's like the whole where do you want to eat, and you don't know, but you just know everywhere you don't want to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it's the only time I know things are right or when I know nothing is wrong. And that is like a hard spot to be in.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this. The AI is helping with a lot of generative processes, both in code and I think in design too.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's anywhere close to replicating some of the work that these UX designers are doing. And from my experience trying to generate front ends, like it all starts to converge.
So not creative.
Yeah.
Like I think that like having a distinct flavor and look and feel of your thing is so underrated, and you don't realize how hard that is to do.
It is so hard.
And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, like how did they get that to look like that? And like, how
in
did they
Figma.
decide? Yeah. It's like all I'm doing is I have complete control over the boxes and lines,
It's
and
crazy.
I still can't get it to look like that.
It's crazy.
So like I think it's incredibly interesting. We've deviated a little bit. We're like a little deeper in the validation process, but I think it's definitely still valuable. I'm curious, what are one of the things that we've touched on is like, how do I identify the core value proposition? How do you think we went about discovering that for Bookends, and how might someone who's listening to this apply that sort of thing?
It's a
Any
good
tactical
question.
Advice, any spiritual advice, getting in the right mindset?
Yeah, it depends if you want to monetize. I think that
Interesting.
is probably an early question you want to answer. If your goal is to make money on the thing, then you're going to want to ask different questions than if your goal is to do. And I'm not saying you have to
I
monetize
get
a
what you're
thing.
saying. I think it's a two-layered question. So it's like, what is the value prop, but also is someone willing to pay for the value prop?
Yeah,
Which is a common thing that I feel like they teach.
If you want to monetize, then you're not going to want to ask yourself anything. You're going to want to get out of the building. You're going to want to search Reddit, scrub Reddit, ask GPT, whatever you want, but like maybe also call some people. Chances are, people in diverse areas and walks of life, hopefully. People with different
I sure hope so.
people with different backgrounds and different professions and different careers. And if you don't know people in different professions and careers, and chances are like
You're probably from Utah. Just kidding.
and like you maybe like that's a good place to start, is like maybe I should go meet people that are in this field that I'm going to service.
Yeah.
I think this is a unique part of software where it's like you've got engineers with zero experience in telecommunications, building telecommunications software, or zero, engineers with no e-commerce experience
Building e-commerce.
building e-commerce tech. That like in other professions, it doesn't really happen. Like your domain sort of becomes part of your title and part of your expertise. I think you start to develop that as an engineer. It's like you get guys that are just cracked at fintech related stuff, and you get guys that are cracked at social and graph style things, and then the AI stuff comes along, and that's a whole ecosystem. But I think where I was going with this is like meet some people, and it doesn't have to be inorganic. Like I think you can still have organic interactions with people even though you're trying to get information from them.
Yeah. I think that is probably one of the most useful things you can do. And what I would add to it is just like what you're doing is you're just talking to as many people as possible. And a key distinction here is you are not trying to validate your idea.
Yeah.
You are trying to validate whether this problem exists.
Yeah, it's all about the problem you're solving.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting there is like in the consumer goods space, like in consumer applications, for example, book apps, like do we need
I wonder why we talk about that so much.
Do we need further validation that people like book apps? No.
Yeah.
I actually don't at all.
Yeah.
Like I need zero validation. And so like the core need there, it's like, well, it definitely exists. And I think what drove us was what we talked about, 15 minutes ago, was that Chad didn't like them for whatever reason. So it's like, okay, let's go chase that thing and figure out what is it that you didn't like about it.
And since I was like kind of a customer of my own idea, actually one of the reasons I really needed Andy for this experiment was like he was able to ask me questions that I didn't know how to answer, and that forced me to think about the product in ways that I didn't think. It was just like I didn't like this stuff, and I didn't, as an engineer, you're not super trained on like defining what it is to like something.
Like, I just know I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
And he would ask prodding questions that was helpful to help me understand why I didn't like it, and to really hone in on like what I wanted to be different. So if you are building for yourself, just maybe have someone that can be a soundboard. Ideally someone that's hyper opinionated. That tends to work.
I think what helps here, and like what we've been circling on, is talk to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Thing. There's like, I don't think there's any substitute for talking to people who are potential users of the thing. Like you can do your Reddit research, and I think people think that if I just, I plug in a deep research prompt on Perplexity or Claude or ChatGPT, whatever you use, if I just do this like deep research thing, then that gives me all that I need to know about this thing. And I'm like, actually, no, I don't think it really gives you very much. Like, I think it gives you a sense, but probably no more than you already knew, like going into the thing, depending on like what you're actually looking at. There might be some cool insights there, but to me, I think there is no replacement for the qualitative data you can get by just talking to a bunch of people about a certain thing. And that's why it was so, I mean, how long do you think it took you to get the first prototype of Bookends?
Oh, I mean,
like what was the time to first user on Bookends?
Oh, first user?
Yeah, not like the paid beta.
Yeah.
Like our first users.
Do I count? Or you? I guess you count. I mean, it was like a week.
Exactly. Right. And like it,
and it was like at night for 30 minutes here and there before it was like there was a deployable in test flight.
And like, granted, like I think Chad is also coming from a space where he, like, you had the skill set that allowed you to get there that quickly. Yeah. Which like not everyone has. But
this was not pre-AI, but this was pre-Cursor.
But like even it was pre-Cursor?
I wasn't using Cursor at the time.
Dude, that's crazy.
Like in November of last year.
You're so cracked. That's insane.
Learning how to spin up an iOS app, by the way, is like the most esoteric. You'd think it'd be well documented on how to like start an iOS project. It's not.
But what I'm saying there is like it took you, a week basically to get something to your first user to download and test and like figure out and play with. Yeah. Right. And so I think there's so much value there and just like get something out quickly and like get someone using it. And I swear there was some other podcast, like Y Combinator or something, did one where they were like, the time of build fast and iterate quickly is done. It's over because of AI. And I'm like, granted, do I know if they actually said that? I can't remember.
But if they did,
no, I swear they did. I swear there was something along those lines.
Was it the one that I sent a few weeks ago?
Maybe. I think it was that same episode they did. Yeah. They said a bunch of like unhinged, like, I don't quite agree with that. Like, you guys just sound like idea guys, basically.
Yeah, I mean, who would just sit in a room and just like say ideas about technology?
Anyway,
bunch of losers.
But like, I still think that is where all the value is, and like, if anything, like AI to me, and I think from your perspective as well, like AI is not going to help you spin up a production ready app in a week. Like AI really struggles. And it's like, if you don't have all the backend knowledge as well of like, how do I provision all of this AWS infrastructure to actually like run the thing and have actual data in it? Mm-hmm. Like, or how do like, if I'm making like, API calls, like that has to be set up. Like, how do I spin up a Lambda and like deploy this thing on it? Like whatever.
It'll get you something.
It'll get you something.
Production ready though is the key here.
That's the thing is I'm like, what AI has done has allowed you to get to the point where you can have a POC incredibly, incredibly fast. Yeah. Like you probably could have spun up a version of Bookends in the web browser in a night. Yeah. Like probably in an hour, honestly. Like you could vibe code of the front end of Bookends.
If anyone wants to try that, I'd actually be curious to see what happens.
I can do that. I can do that right now.
You might have to pay for some database thing that we might be paying for, but
I mean, I think everyone's thinking like Supabase or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, we need to examine those pipelines more. But like what I'm saying is like all of the tooling to prototype really, really quickly in software has never been more available than it is now. And it's not a matter of like having the technical skill to get to a prototype. It's just like, will you do it? And will you keep trying to do it and unblock yourself?
And can you take it
deliver the thing
from 0 to 1 to then like 1 to 2 and 2 to 4? And
so what I'm saying is like the 0 to 1 part is so easy. It's never been easier. Yeah. It has never been easier to go 0 to 1. It is slightly easier to go from 1 to 2 at this point. Yeah. But I'm like, it's not like AI is going to like take you all the way to, scaling to 1 million users. Despite what you read on LinkedIn, all those posts are lies. I am so convinced. It's just a bunch of people grifting and trying to sell courses and lying.
I feel like the curve of the speed of development of a product, maybe if you think of it in terms of a function of how many people are working on it, this is different. But from the terms of like one person working on it, this is coming from my experience. Used to be more like there's a really slow, gradual burn to like base framework and existence of a thing. And then there's like this like tiny ramp up to a more like linear progression of feature development. Yep. Now it's like, holy,
Yeah.
overnight, I've got a framework and stuff that's ready. But then there's like this super slump
Yep.
of like getting past this point is crazy because I've got all this cruft
Yep.
that was spun up. And I'm like, every time I'm building a feature, I'm realizing that the proof of concept that was spun up by AI made a bunch of mistakes. And I'm like slowly cleaning that up. And you just, and even some parts of that are like a downward trend where it's like, oh, now I'm like, this is actually way harder than if I were to just have done it slowly. Is it still faster? Yes.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's such a different way of working on software. I'm still trying to figure out what the right way to approach it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
I mean, I guess if I was to summarize what we're saying there over the past like 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes on
We're not rambling at all.
Segment. Well, I think we've shared some juicy stuff, but I would say you're trying to answer those few questions, like what is the value proposition? How much are people willing to pay for this value proposition? Which I think those are well-known like questions. What was the second one? You had mentioned.
Oh, and what's the fastest way you can get there?
What's the fastest way you could get there? And I think that second point, what's the fastest way you can get there, has various tendrils that we've talked about. So we've talked about like talk to as many people as possible in the places that they hang out. Like you have plenty of tooling to support you in doing this thing now. I think it's a little different for physical goods. If someone listening to us is interested in physical goods, that can be difficult. But I would venture to guess that it's probably still to some degree very possible very quickly. For example, these doors behind me. I did that in a
little
weekend.
plug for the doors
Shout
now.
Shout out, little plug for the doors. I had this idea to do this, and it was part of a broader creative project that I wanted to do like over the course of the year, which has since failed because I just didn't have any time.
It's because you're cooking on bookends.
But yeah, cooking Instagram posts.
Let's go.
But I made these doors in a weekend with some tools I borrowed from a friend. Shout out G Money Monroe.
Ooh,
the Gist King.
Ooh,
but
I don't think you can say that.
We're gonna cut that. But like that's a physical good you could do in a weekend, and I could probably take to a farmer's market and potentially sell.
All right.
Like I think these doors are sellable.
Surveys out. Would you buy these doors?
Would you buy these doors?
And if so, price point?
Yeah. I mean, I think they look great. I'm trying to remember how much it costed to like put them together. I think wood materials.
Don't expose your margin here.
Materials was probably $100 or something.
So you'd sell them for like $8.
And so I'd sell them for probably like $2,000. Because they're bespoke.
Oh yeah, one of a kind.
I can make them to whatever size you want, whatever size circles you want. I can do that. But yeah, no, I think they turned out great. And so to me, I'm like, dude, you can churn out a physical good if you wanted to do like something on paper. Like print shops can do this sort of thing, and there might be some sort of like I don't know minimum order quantity or whatever. But like you can get around that kind of stuff. I think it gets slightly more difficult as you get into like apparel and stuff like that because you have to work with manufacturers and that kind of thing. But I mean,
you probably know someone with a screen printer.
I was just telling Chad about this today. There's a brand of hand sanitizer called Touchland. And my thought was Touchland, and this is not to say that everything needs to have like masculine styling. This is simply just a matter of branding.
Hole in the market he's talking about.
This is a matter of branding, and here's my thought. This brand Touchland, basically, if you don't know already, right, so hand sanitizer exists, Purell, whatever, right, it comes in a little plastic bottle, and you squirt it.
Antitrust lawsuit incoming?
Yeah, I don't know. But basically, it's not, it looks not good, right? It looks like it belongs in a hospital, and the travel sizes they sell are also like kind of fugly. And so Touchland came out and they created these like luxury looking, very aesthetic pleasing dispensers for hand sanitizer, and they're scented and they come in different colors. Even though like, yeah, I'm sure you can get the scent without the color, which I think is just funny that like we add color to make it look like it smells like something.
Yeah.
But so they add in like color, they make it smell like something, and it comes in this nice little bottle that is like kind of squared off so it fits, into a purse or into a bag or whatever, a little better than your standard thing. And my thought was, I want to rebrand this so that it is more masculine or like more appealing to a male audience, because like the colors, personally, again, this is just me personally, I felt like the colors and the scents. I was like, I don't like. I have one, but I'm like, I think you could.
You don't want to
actually
get caught pulling out.
Yeah,
your
I'm like,
hot pink
I wouldn't
hand
get caught
sanitizer.
dead. I wouldn't get caught dead pulling out my
Come
pink hand
on.
sanitizer. It smells like bubble gum. Like,
Dude, that'd be sick.
no
though.
way that's happening. And so what I was thinking is, I'm like,
Bubble gum? No
you
way.
can, look up these brands on Amazon. So look up Touchland on Amazon if you're listening to this, and then look up the other brand is called Patrick.
They're not paying us, by the way.
They're not paying us, but I think Patrick.
In case you were wondering.
Look up Patrick deodorant on Amazon. It's like it comes in like a chrome looking bottle. It's like $60 for a stick of deodorant. And
This guy has like 50 of them.
I have so many of them.
He smells bad and he's
I
rich.
paid thousands of dollars for Patrick deodorant. No, I'm joking. But like I think the design language of Patrick with the idea of luxury scented hand sanitizers that is Touchland, I think that is like a hole that I would love to fill. And the way I would validate this super quickly is you can actually buy.
Find all the dirty people.
Dude, you can buy find the nastiest people you can imagine. No,
Hey, friend, you're super dirty.
you're-
Check out this.
you're like kind of gross.
You like smell bad all the time.
Okay, so what I was saying, how I would validate this, right? So like the quickest time that I could get to product is I would go buy. They sell on Amazon little portable spray bottles that are meant to be like TSA safe or TSA approved sizes, like lower than 3.5 ounces or whatever it is. And they're small. They're chrome. They literally look exactly like something that this brand Patrick's would sell. So you buy those. They're the empty spray bottles. They're about this big. Then I go buy some scented hand sanitizer, which I'm sure I can find online somewhere. Or worst case scenario, I just buy the Touchland stuff, right? And I pour it into the bottle.
And you sell it for $60.
And I sell it for $60. And then I've got my little thing. And like that is leaving a bunch of steps for like packaging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think you could easily just start bringing that places and like start like, you could give them to people. I mean, it's going to cost you almost nothing to like just give that to people and just like see what they think. You could post about it. You could do like all sorts of things to like validate that idea super quickly. And that's a physical good that I'm like, you could do that. I could have a prototype for that by Wednesday.
Do it.
No.
On next week's pod, we will be assessing the success of
is there
this.
a market for masculine hand sanitizer?
That's pretty sick, though.
But I know there's a market.
Someone's going to steal your idea.
Because I would buy
Our millions of viewers are going to steal it.
I would buy this. And I know that my tastes are that of like, I think there are a lot of people online that are just like me.
Okay.
I'm talking to anyone who follows Eric Wong on YouTube or Instagram. You are just like me.
We are the same.
We are the same. Same.
Cut from the
but
same
different.
cloth. Yeah.
But that's okay. Just to close that up. Like even for physical product, I think there's
There you go. You've got your roadmap. Whoever wants to take that idea, he's not going to do it. So run.
Have you ever heard what's the most expensive piece of land in the world?
No.
A cemetery, because there's $1 billion ideas in the ground.
Oh my god.
It's so funny. Low-key true though.
Wait, because the people?
Yeah, because they had ideas and they never acted on them.
How do you know that?
Because they're dead.
They might have.
Well, I mean,
You can't, just because you had an idea and act on it doesn't make you live forever.
they probably have a bigger.
They're not dead as a byproduct of
They
not
probably
acting
have. They
on it.
probably have. It's oh my god.
Where did
it's a
you hear
metaphor.
this?
Leave me alone.
Where did you hear this?
It's a metaphor. Put the fries in the bag, dude. This is just a metaphor. Anyway, okay. Any other notes on that? I think we've put a nice little bow on that.
Oh yeah. Package it, ship it,
Ship that.
ship that.
Okay. I think that concludes our episode. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Any last notes before we close up?
No, this has been fun. Let us know what you want to hear if there's anything. Otherwise, we're just going to keep yapping.
We're gonna keep yapping. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
See you guys.